James Foley, seen here just prior to his gruesome execution by ISIS, the radical Islamist group. Foley has been missing for 2 years, believed held with other Western hostages near Raqqa in northern Syria. An experienced journalist, most recently with Global Post, Foley was abducted on Thanksgiving Day 2012 in northern Syria. 6 weeks after he went missing, his family spoke for the first time publicly about his kidnapping on Today.
After 40 days without information, we felt it was important to make people aware and remind them that Jim's an objective journalist. He's an innocent journalist who is doing his job.
Foley had previously been held captive for 44 days by pro-Gaddafi forces in Libya in 2011. After his release, he was passionate about the need to cover wars, despite the danger, as he told the Boston Globe.
I believe that frontline journalism is important. Without these photos and videos and first-hand experience, we can't really tell the world how bad it might be.
The warning signs have been there for weeks, months, and in some minds, the bubbling cauldron has been turned on high for years. When America was slammed on 9/11, thousands were killed and our way of life changed forever. It came as something of a shock to the masses. The war America is now in with the latest group of killers, ISIS, will come as no shock to anybody. The battle is now joined. The first act of violence has been struck against America, and failing to take immediate notice could cost untold numbers of lives again. Let's welcome back to MidPoint former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney for National Security Affairs and the CEO of DC International Advisory, Stephen Yates. And here in the studio, Professor of Middle East Studies at Florida Atlantic University, former project manager of the U.S. State Department-funded Iraq Research and Documentation Project, and author of a forthcoming book on Salafism, Dr. Robert Rabil. Dr. Rabil, thanks for being here again.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure to see you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Steve, we're going to start with you because you're the one on remote here right now. Is there any doubt in your mind that this, which is basically an act of war, the first act of war directly against America, was right in the ISIS playbook and they've played it exactly as they planned?
Oh, I have no doubt on that front. Basically, they have been at war with us for some time now. This is very reminiscent of the pre-9/11, post-9/11 divide, where we don't necessarily take seriously the reality of organized militant groups who have declared war on us, our allies, our way of life, and we seem to wait until an overwhelming attack or something completely evil like this comes across the television camera to awaken our response.
When it comes down, and again, I'm going to get this to you, Steve, to journalists being overseas, I know it's their job, quite frankly, and I know a lot of these people who do it, but should they not have seen this coming, that sooner or later they were going to be used as pawns?
Well, I think anyone who remembers the Daniel Pearl experience would have a keen sensitivity to the realities of what can happen when you're a journalist operating, especially on the front lines of these groups that are radical Islamist terrorists. You're going to be abducted, you're going to be used as a pawn. We even had a soldier of unknown standing in Bo Bergdahl who was held as a hostage for some time. They take people and they use them. That's what they do. They're not looking at other humans as human beings.
Dr. Rabil, let's talk a little bit here about this whole issue of the airstrikes, now the strike back from ISIS. Does this mean that we're getting to them, or does this simply mean that, again, this was a playbook issue, and what we're doing right now with the airstrikes means nothing?
No, I think we are getting to them in some ways, in that the Kurds have retaken certain towns that were seized by ISIS. ISIS really, according to many Arabic outlets, press outlets, I found out that they were a little bit hurt. And what they've done, I agree with the gentleman, what I've done is part of their modus operandi, but also it's part of their ideological warfare against us and against other people. I have to highlight one point. What they did today, it is part of a strategy, not only to retaliate against United States air attacks against them, but also according to their ideology to try to strike fear in United States based on their ideology. And it's very important to note that.
Do they really think that something like this, in an era when we can see so much violence on television, we can see it on the internet, we see things that are worse than this sometimes.
Yes.
Do they really believe that this is going to strike a fear in the Americans' hearts? Do they really?
Yes, yes. Yes, and today what I did, I went to the jihadi website, I went to a lot of chat rooms, I looked at many tweets, and they have no regret as what they did. And mainly they feel that they should kill more Americans to send the message that United States is in their country, United States is an evil force in the world. And they should go and continue doing that.
What comes next then? Here's the big question. America now has had that direct shot against them. An American citizen has been beheaded. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mentioned it on your show more than one time. Myself, I would like to see ISIS crushed. I know probably now with the administration, with their policy, they are not going to go and put boots on the ground, but I believe that we should be relentless in attacking them airstrike. We should use our drones regularly against them. We should support the Kurds. We should support also the Iraqi government in that, just to put it together. Now they have a new prime minister. We should support the Syrian opposition, the moderate, but also we have to speak with the regional countries, Turkey. We have to speak with Qatar. We have to speak with Saudi Arabia. Listen, we have to work together. This is an evil force, and it's entrenching and deepening its roots in that part of the world. And you cannot allow this to happen. It's like cancer, and it's metastasizing. And this is why early on your show I said it needs to be excised. It needs to be extracted.
Stephen, in your experience, and what does this then lead us to do? Because we hear the president in his statement within the last hour, he was very emotionally distraught about this. You could hear it in his voice. But what now will this push us to do, if anything different?
Well, I agree completely with the professor that the strategy should be to eradicate ISIS. I have grave doubts that the administration has come to terms with what that really means. What the president really needs is to step back and recognize who our enemy is, what the mission needs to be, define it, work with our regional allies, and implement a plan that will actually do what needs to be done. We as Americans don't need to be the ones on the ground. We probably need to be the ones in the air, but we should be supporting all of the regional partners willing to help eliminate ISIS. And it isn't just in Iraq. We have to understand this is not just a one-country problem. It's a cross-border problem, and it does have ties into the neighboring states that fund it and enable it as well.
All right, now to your point, I want you and the professor to hear this. Now, this was earlier today on America's Forum. This was Alan Dershowitz, who was talking about this exact incident. He said the person who executed James Foley could be an English citizen traveling with a European passport. Here's his comments.
We now hear reports that the person who beheaded the American may have been an English citizen, so he's traveling with a European passport. He can come into the United States and bring terrorism here. That's the great fear of ISIS, that it has recruited many Europeans, and those people will have a much easier time doing harm to the United States, both in the United States itself and abroad.
Professor Rabil, I'll come to you. Are we smart enough at this point to know who our enemies are? Because if they're around the world, if they're here in the United States, are we prepared for that?
Well, I hope so. And I hope
Do you think we are, knowing what we've learned in the past?
Well, I think our intelligence are doing a good job. They know who's going in, who's going out. I don't know how exact they are, but I know they are doing thus far a good job. In that, you look at United States, nothing has happened, thank you God. All of them attempts, were made, but they were foiled. Now, I hope that now we pay more attention who's going there, who's getting out. Mainly if you go to Turkey now, if you go to Qatar, if you go to Syria, if you go to Iraq, question have to be asked. Also, let's not forget, you have now better cooperation among the intelligence in Europe than before, because European government, all of them now, are extremely worried. You don't have dozens. I spoke here before. You have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I went to Lebanon myself in 2012, and I went to the border, the Lebanese-Syrian border, and somehow I felt you had some Chechen there, some Chechen and Dagestani, and that was in Lebanon in 2012, summer 2012. So I am not surprised.
Stephen, I'm going to throw the last one to you here with a little bit less than a minute that we have here. Is there any doubt in your mind whatsoever that we are looking not only at the first act of war, but what will be the first act in a long play that will eventually get to a strike on American soil?
I believe firmly that that is their design. They seek to achieve objectives greater than what al-Qaeda was able to do. The fact that we saw an ISIS is here sign show up in the Ferguson demonstrations, whether it's true or false, is a chilling reminder to Americans that we're probably not really on the footing we need to be to deal with this kind of challenge. They have YouTube campaigns, native English language campaigns, trying to turn recruits within our own country. This is a dead serious challenge.
It is a dead serious challenge, and one that I tend to think that many people aren't quite aware that it probably is coming to our shores sooner rather than later. Stephen Yates, thank you so much. Dr. Rabil, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Gentlemen, we're going to have to do this again a lot more often because there's a whole lot more to this story than what we have just talked about here today. Later on this hour, News Call focuses on this very story and details how the international media is covering another cowardly act by terrorists, the beheading of an American journalist. And we go around the dial with syndicated talker Ed Dean, who no doubt will have something to add on this issue and much more, including what is happening in Ferguson, Missouri after another night of unrest. That's all coming up right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.